Welcome to the Essence of Health Tea Time Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Shayla Toombs-Withers. As a double board-certified family and obesity medicine physician with over 12 years of experience in medicine, I teach motivated individuals how to achieve their desired quality of life while preventing and reversing chronic diseases. It's tea time. According to recent data, more than 70% of American adults are overweight or obese. And these same studies have found that only about 12% of adults are considered to be metabolically healthy. Ladies, when we look at this data further, women in midlife, particularly those ages 40 to 65, are experiencing ever-increasing rates of metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance, and weight gain that's often tied to hormonal changes during perimenopause and menopause. So, America, we have a problem. And the problem is the food on our plates. Welcome to the Essence of Health Tea Time Podcast. I'm Dr. Shayla Toombs-Withers, board-certified obesity medicine and functional medicine physician and certified hormone specialist. If you're new to the show, welcome to season 4. This season, we're doing something a little different. We're taking popular health and wellness news articles that are making the headlines and reviewing them together, but with a twist. I'll be giving you my take on these topics through the lens of being a physician, integrative and functional medicine specialist. There's been some major news in the nutrition world this month that affects every single one of us. In January 2026, the U.S. government announced brand new dietary guidelines. And if you haven't seen them already, well, let me tell you, these new guidelines are a major shift from what we've been told for decades by our governing bodies. So today, I'll be spilling the tea on your metabolism and the food pyramid flip. Today's article is brought to us by the folks at National Public Radio, or NPR, who published an article on January 8th titled, RFK Jr.'s New Dietary Guidelines Go All In on Meat and Dairy. I'll place the link to the article in the show notes so that you can read it yourself and then share your take from the article with me on any of my social media channels. We're going to take a dive into what these new food guidelines say, what changed from the old recommendations, and most importantly, what this means for your health, especially if you're a woman dealing with hormonal changes, metabolic changes, or just trying to figure out what you should actually be eating because the food noise out in the media is likely louder than the food noise going on in your head right now. Before we dive into today's tea, a quick note for the women listening who feel unheard, dismissed, or confused about their health, hormones, weight, or energy. I want to share some exciting news with my Atlanta area listeners. I am thrilled to announce the opening of our new Essence of Health Wellness Clinic location in Atlanta, offering our concierge care experience designed specifically for you. We're currently enrolling in our Atlanta Founder Circle, and the first 10 members who enroll at our Atlanta location will receive a free comprehensive metabolic lab analysis as part of their membership. This significant value is our way of saying thank you to our founding members who are joining us in bringing personalized, high-quality, integrative, and functional care to the Atlanta area. If you're interested in learning more about becoming a founding member and being one of the select 10 to grab this bonus, then head on over to drshayla.com/EOH. Now, keep listening and get this tea. In early January 2026, the United States Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Agriculture jointly announced new dietary guidelines for Americans. Now, these guidelines are released every 5 years, but this update is particularly significant because it represents what some are calling the most significant reset on nutrition policy in history. Even more eye-catching is the centerpiece of these new guidelines, a brand new food pyramid. Now, if you're like me and remember the old original food pyramid from the early 1990s, you might be having flashbacks. If you take a listen to season 1 of the Essence of Health Tea Time podcast, on one of our very first episodes, episode 3 of that season, I gave you the tea about what's on your plate by taking you on a journey through the history of our USDA food guidelines. But here's the thing, this new pyramid is literally turned upside down compared to what's been told to Americans for decades. The new pyramid is literally flipped upside down. Think an upside down triangle with protein, dairy, and healthy fats at the very top, the widest part. This includes red meat, cheese, eggs, fish, and full fat dairy products. Right next to that, we have vegetables, with fruits being lower down the pyramid, right next to butter and nuts. And at the very bottom, the narrowest point, you have your whole grains. Now, this is completely in contrast to the original food pyramid from the 1990s. That pyramid stood upright, had grains at the bottom, the widest part, and told us to eat 6 to 11 servings of bread, cereal, rice, and pasta every day. Next were fruit and vegetables. Then the next smaller level was meat, poultry, eggs, nuts, and dairy. Fats, oils, and butter spreads were at the tiny top of the 90s pyramid with a specific message to use sparingly. In 2011, the USDA actually retired the pyramid concept altogether and replaced it with my plate. Does anyone remember that? It was a plate divided into sections showing that half your plate should be fruits and vegetables, with the smaller sections for grains and protein, and a little circle for dairy. This plate was the national recommendation for about 10 years. But now, 15 years later, we're back to a pyramid, but not quite, as it's completely flipped on its head, both literally and figuratively. This new pyramid is definitely an interesting concept. And I will say that I do like the overall resounding theme to eat real food. But I certainly don't agree with everything promoted with these new food guidelines as a physician practicing in the field of metabolic health, and with the impact I've personally seen based on individuals following some of these recommendations already. However, I didn't agree exactly with the other recommendations either, so there's that. Which also speaks to the need for personalized care when it comes to you and your health. All right, now let's break down the major changes in this new pyramid and these new guidelines even further. Then keep listening as I give you my take on these. First, there's a major emphasis on protein and healthy fats. The guidelines explicitly state that protein and healthy fats are essential and were wrongly discouraged in prior dietary guidelines. This is a direct acknowledgement that previous recommendations may have steered Americans in the wrong direction. Well, newsflash, they did and continue to do so. Second, and this is huge, the guidelines call for ending the war on saturated fats, in quotes. For decades, we've been told to limit saturated fat because of concerns about heart disease. The new guidelines still recommend limiting saturated fat to 10% of daily calories, but the tone and emphasis have shifted significantly, which is important to take note of. Full fat dairy is now elevated to the top of the pyramid. And because these guidelines also affect what our children are fed, there's even an allowance for full fat milk and dairy products in school meals. Third, there's a strong push to dramatically reduce consumption of highly processed foods. Now, this one I can certainly stand behind. The guidelines call for a dramatic reduction in foods laden with refined carbohydrates, added sugars, excess sodium, unhealthy fats, and chemical additives. The language emphasizes eating real food that nourishes the body. Amen to that. Fourth, whole grains are now distinguished sharply from refined grains. While whole grains are pictured at the smallest point of the pyramid, the guidelines do instruct Americans to prioritize fiber-rich whole grains with recommendations of 2 to 4 servings per day. The key word here is whole, not refined. I can applaud this one as well. Fifth, there are new recommendations around sugar, particularly for children. The guidelines recommend no amount of added sugar for children under the age of 5. That's a pretty strong stance, but I like it. Now, the next step would be to stop marketing processed and sugary food products to our children, but that would be a whole new episode. Finally, there are changes to alcohol recommendations. Previous guidelines specify up to 1 drink per day for women and 2 for men. The new guidelines simply state consume less alcohol for better health, quote, without specifying amounts, and they list specific groups who should completely avoid alcohol. This leaves you to your own devices for alcohol use, though, so choose wisely. Now, I want you to understand something important. These dietary guidelines are more than just an announcement to the public. They don't just sit on a shelf somewhere, they are highly influential. They determine what's served in our school meals, on military bases, and what's included in federal food assistance programs like WIC, the program for women, infants, and children. So, when these guidelines change, it affects millions of Americans' daily food choices. But just because nutrition guidelines have changed, this doesn't mean all the previous research was wrong. What it means is that nutrition science is complex, nuanced, and evolving. What works for one person may not necessarily work for another. And as we learn more about metabolism, hormones, and individual variation, our recommendations do need to adapt. All right. Now, get this tea on what these new guidelines mean for you, especially for women dealing with hormonal and metabolic challenges. Let's start with the elephant in the room, saturated fat. The new guidelines call for ending the war on saturated fats. And as you might expect, this has clearly been controversial. The NPR article I reviewed quotes Dr. Christopher Gardner, a nutrition expert at Stanford who has a PhD in nutrition science, who was on the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee. He expressed disappointment that red meat and saturated fat sources are at the very top of the pyramid, saying it goes against decades and decades of evidence and research. And I agree. It's clear that the graphic for the new food pyramid was created to give us some shock and awe, but the message it sends still puts us at risk by placing the steak and cheese and ground beef front and center of view. The American Heart Association and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics also point to evidence that excess saturated fat is indeed linked to heart disease. So what's the truth? Well, the answer is actually nuanced. The research on saturated fat and heart disease is actually more complicated than many have been led to believe. While studies show associations between saturated fat intake and cardiovascular risk, other studies show that the actual benefits of this are most significant in high-risk populations, meaning that it has to be viewed in context of a whole foods diet versus a diet high in processed foods, as well as in context of your personal risk factors. Many of my meat and dairy eaters like to highlight that our bodies process the saturated fat in grass-fed beef or butter from pasture-raised cows differently than the saturated fat in processed meats or fried foods. And this is true as the frying process increases trans fat formation and more harmful plaque-forming substances within our body. Studies have shown that a single bolus of saturated fat from frying has been shown to acutely increase insulin resistance, liver triglycerides, and cause your body to produce excess sugar. However, when we compare the saturated fat in these animal-based meat and dairy sources, we know that by actually replacing these sources with polyunsaturated fats, whole grains, and plant proteins, we have an even lower risk of cardiovascular disease. Another thing not to miss here is the importance of understanding your health history, genetic variations, or existing cardiovascular conditions, as you will definitely need to be more cautious with your consumption of saturated fat. This is where the importance of having an advanced cardiovascular screening comes into place. At Essence of Health, when evaluating my patients for cardiovascular risk, I include testing to check your advanced lipid markers, your lipoprotein markers, your coronary calcium risk score, or other advanced testing that's determined by having an in-depth discussion and review of your personal and family health history. By having this personalized evaluation, you don't have to follow broad, generic recommendations, but you'll know what's recommended for you and your health risk. Now, what you eat with the saturated fat does matter. If you're eating a burger of any type, beef, turkey, or soy, on a white bun with fried potatoes and a sugary soda, that's a very different metabolic situation than eating steamed tofu with roasted potatoes and a salad. Here's what I tell my patients. The goal is not to go crazy eating saturated fat just because the guidelines have changed. Even if you look at the new guidelines, they recommend that saturated fat consumption should not exceed 10% of your daily calories. What does this mean in numbers? If you're on a 2,000 calorie per day diet, then you should not be consuming any more than about 22 grams of saturated fat per day. For those on a 1,500 calorie diet, your limit is 16 grams of saturated fat or less per day. So that large steak front and center on the new pyramid, if it's about an 8-ounce steak, it contains about 20 grams of saturated fat. Comparatively, 8 ounces of salmon, about 3 to 6 grams of saturated fat. And 8 ounces of tofu, less than 2 grams of saturated fat. So choose wisely, folks. The goal is to focus on quality food and to understand your individual needs and response. For my ladies who are listening, especially women in perimenopause and menopause, saturated fat from high quality sources can actually be beneficial. Why? Because fats are essential for hormone production. Your sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, are made from cholesterol. But don't miss this part. Your liver, when functioning well, naturally produces most of the cholesterol that your body actually needs. So this is why you should choose quality fats for more of the middle to the right side of this new upside down pyramid, and less of the inflammatory producing and cardiac risk elevating left side of the pyramid. Next, let's talk about protein, because this is where the new guidelines really get something right for women in midlife. As we age, particularly during perimenopause and menopause, our protein needs actually increase. Why? Several reasons. First, we naturally lose muscle mass as we age, a process called sarcopenia. Adequate protein intake combined with resistance exercise and strength training helps to preserve muscle mass. And muscle mass is metabolically active, meaning it helps your body to naturally burn calories, maintain strength, and stay physically independent as you age. Second, protein is highly satiating. It helps you feel full and satisfied, which can be incredibly helpful if you're dealing with increased appetite or food cravings related to hormonal changes. This is also helpful to reduce your intake of processed, easy to grab foods as you feel more full for a longer period of time. Third, protein has a higher thermic effect than carbohydrates or fats, meaning your body burns more calories digesting and metabolizing protein. By doing this, your body is naturally working in your favor to help you achieve your healthy weight. Fourth, adequate protein supports stable blood sugar levels, which is crucial for managing insulin resistance, something that often develops or worsens during the perimenopausal and menopausal period. Research suggests that women over 40 may need 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which is a bit higher than the standard recommendation of 0.8 grams per kilogram for adult women over the age of 19 in general. For a 150-pound woman over 40, this translates to a recommended protein intake of about 80 to 110 grams of protein per day. Many of us aren't eating nearly enough protein, especially at breakfast. I often hear from individuals who are consuming cereal, toast, or muffins for breakfast. Not the high in fiber kinds either. I'm talking about the popular brands, which are mostly processed carbohydrates. And then we wonder why we're hungry 2 hours later and craving a sugary snack or having an energy crash by mid-morning. So choose a healthful protein source for breakfast to start your body off in a way that will help you to feel energized and fuel you throughout the day. Now, when we talk about healthy fats, I want to emphasize something the new guidelines highlight. Quality matters, but here's where we differ. The new guidelines recommend full-fat dairy and cheese. I don't. The problem with previous general dietary recommendations in the past was that by promoting low-fat diets, food manufacturers who still wanted to sell you their food products lowered the fat but added more sugar so that you would still purchase it. This has led to many of the metabolic problems we're seeing today. But going full swing back into full-fat everything is not the solution either. In the NPR article, Dr. Dariush Mozaffarian from Tufts University notes that research on dairy shows both low-fat and whole-fat versions have been linked to lower cardiovascular risk, and the fat content doesn't seem to make a big difference. But here's the kicker. The research shows that this lower cardiovascular risk is only modest, And the lowest risk was actually with yogurt, as it contains fermented gut healthy probiotics, and not the big gulp of whole milk that's prominently featured on this new flip pyramid. So, I'm not recommending you go out and start eating more cheese and dairy, because the evidence is still clear that plant-based sources of fat will give you even more cardiovascular benefits and overall health benefits than the modest benefits you're going to get from full-fat dairy. So we're talking about eating avocados and olives, nuts and seeds, nut butters and tahini, hemp seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds. These fats provide essential fatty acids, support hormone production, aid in the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins, your A, D, E, and K vitamins, and help with satiety and fullness. This is in addition to improving your heart health as well. Now, get this tea, because here's something I'm really excited about in the new guidelines: the strong stance against highly processed foods. I'm going to give it a hand. The new guidelines call for a dramatic reduction in highly processed foods laden with refined carbohydrates, added sugars, excess sodium, unhealthy fats, and chemical additives. They emphasize eating real food that nourishes the body. I've been teaching this to my patients for a long time. And if you're a longtime listener of the Essence of Health Tea Time podcast, then you certainly have heard me tell you this as well. We've known that ultra-processed foods are a major driver of metabolic dysfunction, hormone dysregulation, and mood dysregulation as well, regardless of whether they're low fat, low carb, or whatever other trendy food label the manufacturers want to use. For those who may be asking, so what are ultra-processed foods? Think about it this way. If it comes in a box, a bag, or a package with a long list of ingredients, typically more than 3 ingredients, or things you can't pronounce, then it's probably ultra processed. When we say ultra processed, we're talking about packaged snack foods, sugary cereals, most breads and baked goods made with refined flour. Yes, even if they stamp the whole grain label on it, because that typically only means that they added those few little grains you see on the top of the loaf of bread. Processed meats with lots of additives and preservatives, frozen meals, sugary drinks, many low-fat or fat-free products that remove the fat and replace it with added sugar. These foods are designed to be delicious in your mouth. They're engineered to override your natural fullness signals and instead make you crave them and want to eat more of them. They're also typically low in fiber and low in actual nutrients, while being high in calories, which is a perfect recipe for weight gain and metabolic problems. For women dealing with insulin resistance, polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, or metabolic syndrome, reducing ultra-processed foods can be one of the single most impactful dietary changes you can make. Our NPR article that we're reviewing today quotes Dr. Mozaffarian as saying, highly processed foods are clearly harmful for a range of diseases. So to have the U.S. government recommend that a wide class of foods be eaten less because of their processing is a big deal, and I think a very positive move for public health. Quote, while I completely agree with Dr. Mozaffarian, I like to take it a step further and hold our food manufacturers accountable to reduce the processed food additives and use less harmful ingredients to actually produce our food. Whether you eat low carb or low fat, whether you include meat or you're plant-based, everyone benefits from reducing ultra-processed foods. Finally, let's talk about the small tip at the bottom of our upside-down food pyramid, the grains, because I think there's been some confusion about the new guidelines here. Yes, whole grains are at the smallest point of the pyramid, but the guidelines still recommend 2 to 4 servings per day of fiber-rich whole grains. The key distinction is between whole grains and refined grains. Whole grains include the entire grain kernel, the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. They provide helpful sources of fiber, B vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients. Some good foods to consume to get your whole grains include steel cut or rolled oats, but be sure to get the unsweetened kind and add your own toppings. Brown rice, quinoa, whole wheat if it's tolerated, barley, farro. Refined grains have been processed to remove the bran and germ, leaving mostly just starch. Examples of that include white bread, white rice, most of the conventional pastas, many crackers and snack foods, pastries, and baked goods that are made with white flour. The new guidelines are making a strong distinction here. The problem isn't whole grains per se, it's the overconsumption of refined grains that have been stripped of their fiber and nutrients. Now, here's where I give you a more nuanced tea. While whole grains can be a part of a healthy diet for many people, there's a significant individual variation in how well people tolerate grains, even whole grains. Some people, particularly those with insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, may find that even whole grains cause significant blood sugar spikes. Others tolerate them well when eaten in appropriate portions and paired with protein and fat. Some people have gluten sensitivity or celiac disease and need to avoid wheat, barley, and rye entirely. Others have no issue with gluten, but do better with less grain overall. But here's the kicker. The goal is fiber. Yes, you can get fiber from whole grains, but you can also get great sources of fiber from higher up on the wider part of the new pyramid here by eating more of the foods on the right side. Those dark leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, berries, beans, and legumes. This is why personalized nutrition is so important. What works for your neighbor or your family member may not necessarily work for you. For most of my patients, I recommend if you eat grains, choose whole grains over refined. Watch your portion sizes. 2 to 4 servings is much less than what many Americans are currently eating. Pair grains with healthful lean protein and plant sources of fat to minimize blood sugar spikes. Pay attention to how you feel, your energy level, your hunger, your cravings, if you have any digestive symptoms after eating grains. While we're talking about our energy level, let me tell you about Handful Activewear and their versatile sports bras and compression leggings designed for women by women. They are perfect for yoga, running, workouts, and everyday comfort. And speaking of comfort and movement, remember that physical activity is one of those crucial lifestyle factors that supports your metabolic health alongside your nutrition. But being a busy professional myself, I know that transition from the gym to your daily routine needs to be seamless and can be with their practical designs. Handful is giving you 30% off for getting this tea today. Just use code EOHWC at handful.com. So now that we've covered all of this, let's talk about what it actually means for your health. Because here's the truth. You can't just blindly follow any set of dietary guidelines, whether they're the old pyramid, my plate, or the new pyramid, and expect optimal results. Why? Because you are unique. Your metabolism is unique. Your hormones are unique. Your genetics, your lifestyle, your stress levels, your sleep quality, your gut health, your medical history, all of these factors influence how you respond to different foods. Many women will find that what worked for them in their 20s and their 30s stopped working in their 40s and 50s. Maybe you could eat whatever you wanted when you were younger and maintain your weight, but now that scale is creeping up. Maybe you're experiencing new cravings, especially for carbs and sweets. Maybe you're dealing with some belly fat that seems impossible to lose. Maybe your energy is dragging, even though you're eating what you consider to be healthy. But these are all signs that your metabolic health needs some attention. And it's not just about following a food pyramid, any food pyramid, as these are just guidelines, but may not be your personal solution. This is one of the reasons why I practice the way I do. At Essence of Health Wellness Clinic, our appointments are longer as I like to take the time to really understand your whole story, run comprehensive labs, and create a truly personalized plan for you. I don't just hand you a food pyramid diagram and send you on your way. We dig deep into your unique metabolic and hormonal situation together and develop a plan that's going to be right for you. All righty, let's wrap this up. We've covered a lot today, from taking a trip down through the history of the food pyramid to an update on the new guidelines that flip everything on its head to what this all means for your metabolic and hormonal health. Here are the key points I want you to remember. 1, nutrition science is evolving, and what we're told is healthy changes as we learn more. That's okay. It's a sign that science is working, not that we've been lied to. 2, the new guidelines get some important things right, emphasizing protein, recognizing the value of healthy fats, taking a strong stance against ultra processed foods, and distinguishing between whole grains and refined grains. But there are some nuances that should be addressed when it comes to your personal health. Three, not all saturated fat is created equal, and context matters. Quality of food sources and your individual metabolic situation are crucial. Four, for women dealing with hormonal transitions and metabolic changes, adequate lean protein, incorporating plant-based protein, and healthy fats are particularly important. Five, no dietary guidelines can be one size fits all. You need personalized guidance based on your unique body, your hormones, your metabolism, and your health goals. Six, the most important thing you can do is work with a knowledgeable physician who will take the time to understand your individual situation and help you create a personalized plan. Now, if you're feeling overwhelmed or you're not sure even where to start with implementing healthier habits in this new year, I have something for you. I've created a free doctor-approved New Year Health Reset Checklist. This is a comprehensive resource that will help you identify the most impactful areas to focus on for your health, with actionable steps that you can take right away. It covers nutrition, movement, sleep, stress management, and more. All of the key pillars of metabolic and hormonal health. To get your free checklist, head on over to drshayla.com/freebies, FREEBIES. That's drshayla.com/freebies. I'll also put that link in the show notes for you. And again, if you're in the Atlanta area, don't forget to check out our new clinic location and find out how to become one of the select few invited to join our Atlanta Founders Circle, where the first 10 members will get a free comprehensive metabolic lab panel upon enrollment. That's a significant value and a great way to start your health journey with real data about your body. Learn more at drshayla.com/EOH. Before we go, make sure you've subscribed to the Essence of Health Tea Time podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, I really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. This season, we'll be reviewing more health news and giving you the integrative and functional medicine expert tea on the topics that matter to you most. Until next time, take care of yourself, nourish your body with real food, and don't forget to grab that free New Year Health Reset Checklist. Remember, the essence of health is in you. Thank you for joining me today on the Essence of Health Tea Time podcast. Click the subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss a moment of the Essence of Health Tea Time podcast. Check out the show notes to obtain your free tips for healthy living guide to get you started on your health and wellness path. Follow me on social media at Essence of Health Wellness Clinic on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and at dr.tw@EOHWC on TikTok. Interested in becoming a member of the Essence of Health coaching program? Well, head on over to www.eohcoaching.com. The essence of health is in you.